And for years, nobody thought anybody could run under 4-minute miles. All the physicians and all the sports psychologists and all these great thinkers said, it's impossible. Do you understand? The body just doesn't go that fast. In fact, if anybody ever was able to will themselves under 4-minute mile, their lungs would explode and they would die. That's what everybody believed. For years, everybody believed that. Then one day, Roger Bannister, oh, by the way, the youngest in his family, Roger Bannister breaks the 4-minute mile. And what do you think happens next? This is really important fact. What do you think, anybody, what do you think happens after Roger Bannister runs a 4-minute mile?
A bunch more people.
Right. A bunch of people, all of a sudden, these great world-class athletes run sub 4-minute miles. Why? Their physical ability didn't change. It's not like they woke up the next day any faster. You know what happened? All of a sudden, their mind told them, wait a minute, I can run. This guy proved it. He didn't die. It's possible. I can do it. Mind over matter. Your mind defines the reality of the situation. Last sort of running example, Wilma Rudolph. Don't know if any of you have heard of her. She was in the 1960 Olympics, won 3 gold medals. At the time, she was the fastest runner in the world, female runner in the world. By the way, 22 kids in her family, she's number 20. It starts to get freaky, some of these commonalities. She's 20th out of 22, and she's born with polio. She can't walk without braces. Doctors tell her, listen, you're just not going to be able to ever walk without braces and crutches. She doesn't accept it. Her mother doesn't accept it. Her mother massages her legs every night when she's a young girl. Finally, she is able to walk without braces. She becomes the fastest female in the world, 1960. Somewhere there's something to all this. And what I believe to be, and what I'm sort of pushing out there to you to think about is, when does your mind define your reality? If you believe you have the right stuff, when does that become your reality to achieve to the potential of what you have? If you believe your business, your endeavor, your challenge has the opportunity to go to the moon, well, when do you, like all those sub 4-minute milers, all of a sudden make it happen? Now, I don't know the answer to this, but I'm quite convinced, and you'll get our book and you'll read it and you see what you think, that there's a tremendous amount to this sort of connecting up what's in your heart, what's in your mind, what's in your soul with where you sort of achieve in life or how close you get to your eventual goals and your dreams. So those are, let me go to number 5, and I am watching the time. Oh, I want to tell you a story about hard working. Those of you who've met me before this evening know most of the entrepreneuring I did was in the real estate world. And this is back to being a hard worker. I'm a young entrepreneur here in Fairfield County trying to make my way. I'm starting to get a little bit of attraction, a little bit of attention, and there's a very successful real estate entrepreneur. I'd be surprised if any of you heard of him or remember him. Anybody heard of a guy named Loomis Grossman? Okay, Loomis was 85 years old. At the time I was 30. I had started to get a little bit of attention. One day I get a call from Loomis. Think back to the Pablo Picasso quote. I don't know when inspiration's going to hit me, but I want to be working when it does. So Loomis calls me one day, Randel, and he talked real fast, and he was gruff. He was kind of a street guy, you know, he grew up gruff. He eats with his hands, and he'd get food all over his face, one of those kind of guys. Randel, I want to show you a deal in Maine, and be ready. I'll pick you up in 2 days. We'll go look at it. So I think, okay, Post Road, Main Street. I didn't know where, but I was flattered that he wanted to, you know, show me this deal he was interested. So he comes 2 days later to pick me up in his big, gigantic Cadillac. And we start heading toward I-95. I say, Loomis, I thought you said it was on Main Street. No, I didn't say Main Street. I said Maine. He's driving me up to friggin' Maine. 8-hour drive. And he's one of these guys who's never looking at the road when he's talking to you. It's like this the whole time. And he's had an incredible bladder. He never wants to stop. 8-hour drive with this guy on my way up to Maine. He looks at this deal for 10 minutes, 8 hours back. It was the worst day of my life. Why did he do this? You know why? Because I was starting to get attention in Fairfield County as a guy who knew what was going on. He wanted to make sure there was nothing that I knew. Pablo Picasso, looking for something that might change his life, he kidnapped me for 16 hours just to see, was there any piece of information he could get from me that he could turn into a deal or a new tenant or a new business. That's an 85-year-old guy working pretty hard, and by the way, it was worth about $200 million at the time. Another quick story, the way I got attention here in Fairfield County in Connecticut, I did a deal. It was at the time called the Norwalk Factory Outlet Center. It's at exit 16. It's now an office building. And just to show you that sometimes things do work out, it was my first deal. I had done nothing at that point except renovate a couple single-family houses. I decided I was ready for some next level, so I went after a 180,000 square foot industrial building. There's no logic to this story at all. And turned it into what at the time was one of the first factory outlet centers in an urban area. Bought it for about $1.5 million, borrowed money, and all borrowed. So I was really out on the edges. And by creating this sort of new use on this abandoned industrial building, was able to sell it 5 years later. We bought it for $1.5 million, put in a couple hundred, all borrowed. Was able to sell it a couple years later for $10.5 million. And that was one of the things that Loomis knew about, and that's why I was getting attention. But it leads to the next point about why some people perform to their potential and others don't. I think great entrepreneurs are able to see around corners. I think great entrepreneurs are able to look at the edges. There's a wonderful book I'd recommend to you, and I'll just read you one paragraph from it, called Blue Ocean Strategy. Have any of you ever heard of this book? It's really a great book for entrepreneurs. The premise of Blue Ocean Strategy is that you don't want to compete in the red water, which is where everybody's mauling each other and eating each other and it's all red and bloody. You want to try to swim out into the blue water where it's clear, and although it may be uncharted, you know, you're into waters that nobody's quite sure where they go and so forth and so on. Imagine a market universe composed of two sorts of oceans, red oceans and blue oceans. Red oceans represent all the industries in existence today. This is the known market space. Blue oceans denote all the industries not in existence today. This is the unknown market space. In the red oceans, industry boundaries are defined and accepted, and the competitive rules of the game are known. Here, companies try to outperform their rivals to grab a market share of existing demand. As the market space gets crowded, prospects for profits and growth are reduced. Products become commodities, cutthroat competition. It's always important to swim successfully in the red ocean by outcompeting, but red oceans will always matter. But with supply exceeding demand and more industries competing for a share of contracting markets, while necessary, will not be sufficient to sustain high performance. Companies need to get beyond competing to seize new profit and growth opportunities. They also need to find blue oceans. The point of my Norwalk factory outlet story, and my sort of next point about how you achieve your potential, is you got to get to the edges. That you have to be able to look around the corners. In my case, the Norwalk factory outlet deal was so profitable because I was just beyond, I wasn't into crazy waters. My partner and I, we had some knowledge of the real estate and what its value might be, but we went to the edges. Nobody had ever put in an urban area like Norwalk, Connecticut, a bunch of factory outlet stores into one building. And so if you read this book, The Blue Ocean Strategy, it says, go to the edges of where everybody's competing. Not, you know, you don't go hundreds of miles out, but you go just to the edges and try to find a logical extension. That's another reason people don't perform. They don't look beyond what they're certain about. In some cases, they're afraid to take risks. They play it too safe.